Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to create this scene in 3D with grease pencil. Some clips may look a little jumbled, that's because some of them got deleted by my cat. He walked across the keyboard and I had to record them. I was going to be mad, but look at him. Anyways, let's get started. First, let's create the mesh. Here I created the ground. Shift A to create a cylinder, then scale it up with S and scale it down on the Z-axis. Then go to Modifier and add the Edge and Subdivision modifier to smooth out the edges. Now increase the subdivision to 3 and apply the modifiers. Create another cylinder. Tab into Edit mode, right-click to subdivide once. Now select the ring just created and move it up with GZ. Note I also switched to wireframe mode. Now extrude that section, then immediately press S to create a stump at the top. Shift D to create the other pillar with Y to move it along the Y-axis. Shift A to create a cube. Scale it down on the Z and Y-axis with S. And scale it up on the X-axis. Move it into place. Hover over it and press L to select it, then duplicate it and move it to the top. Select the edges. Note you can change from point to edge to surface at the top and right-click to subdivide. At the bottom left corner, you can increase the number of cuts. Select one of the points and move it to the position you want. It may be helpful to turn on proportional editing. You can increase the radius by scrolling up or down. Now, again with L and Shift D, create the top portion of the mesh. After some adjusting, including elongating everything on the X-axis, I managed to get it to a nice shape. I also selected this part and pressed P to separate it from the rest so the other part wouldn't get affected by the proportional editing. To join them back together, go to Object Mode, select everything and press Command J. Then I created more cylinders for the trees and bamboo. I also added a camera, so I know how to place the trees so it looks good. You can move the camera to view with Ctrl-Alt-Numpad 0, or go to the camera with Numpad 0. To make the ground, I'm going into Sculpt mode after selecting it, to the top right corner and hit Remesh. For most, I went with 0.01, which is probably too low for a project like this. You can probably go between 0.1 to 0.06 and still get a good effect. Too low a number will later slow Blender down, a consequence I suffered later. By the way, if you notice your brush behaving weirdly, go back to the object and press Ctrl-A to apply all transformation. Mostly I'm using the grab tool to move the mesh around, but some other tools that you may find helpful are, here I'm using the grab tool to create an uneven forest floor. You can increase or decrease the strength or radius at the top. For the trees, something similar can be done with the grab tool. You might have noticed that this is a separate clip. Yep, it got deleted as well. Select the tree, Ctrl-A to apply transformation, and go into Sculpt mode to remesh. Before sculpting, you can go into Edit mode, select the bottom and scale it up with proportional editing to create the stump. Go back to Sculpt mode and with the grab tool, add some uneven and random features to it. You can also select the top and narrow it down. As for the bamboo, there is no need to use Sculpt mode unless you want to add some bends to it. Go into Edit mode and right-click to subdivide several times. Scale up a few rings to create bamboo's stumpy feature. Now just repeat this step until they look like this. I also created some moss that is 3D, the rest are 2D drawn on with grease pencil. These are testing ones. I'll be deleting them later, so just ignore them for now. I know they kind of look like slugs, but it'll be better once there's color. Shift A to create a plane, go into edit mode and press M to merge at the center. Go to modifier and add the skin modifier and also a subdivide to give it more detail. Now in edit mode, you can select that point and E to extrude out. To scale, instead of pressing S, Control A should do the trick. Now apply the modifiers and go into sculpt mode. Again, using the grab tool to pull it into the shape you like. For creating the rope, I made this in a separate file and later exported it as an FBX. You can make this in the original file, though it might be a little slow. Shift A to create a circle, then create an empty object. Rotate it around the Z-axis by 90 degrees with R, then 90. Go to Modifier and add an array, uncheck Relative Offset, check Object Offset, and select the empty object. Go into Edit mode, move it along the axis, and increase the count to 4. Add the screw modifier and increase the screw. You can also rotate the circle by 45 degrees, or maybe try -45 if that doesn't work. Apply the array modifier in object mode and create a Bezier curve. Shift select the rope thing and Control P to parent. Now to the rope, add a curve modifier. Select the curve you just made. Now, if we control this curve and extrude it out in edit mode, the shape of the rope can be controlled. Note that you can scale, rotate, and move this around. To increase the length, you can increase the step in the modifier. For the leaves, ignore the ground for now. I'll get to it soon. Shift A to create a UV sphere, scale it down, and move it into place. Remember to apply all transformations. Again, going into sculpt mode, and with the grab tool, pull it into cloud-like shapes. Now, on to material. For the ground, instead of using texture painting and doing UV unwrapping, which will be a pain since the ground was remeshed, I went back to sculpt mode. If you scroll down, you'll find the painting brush. Change the color at the top and start painting. To blend the colors, you can use the smear tool below. I also added some brown to the ground later on by decreasing the strength so it's a little transparent. After that, if we change the viewport, it might look something like this at first, so we need to add a sun. At the side, you can control the strength and the angle of sunlight. You'll notice the color on the ground has disappeared. To get the color back, go to the shader editor and create a new material while with the ground selected and Shift A to add a color attribute. I renamed the color attribute to ground. As for the rest, the node structure will all look very similar. Just click on the object and create a new material. Shift A to create a shader to RGB and color ramp. Change the color ramp to constant and play around with the color. You can create new materials or select the ones that are already made. To add another color to the same object, go into Edit mode, click the little plus sign and select or create a material. Then click Assign. By the end, it should look something like this. Now finally onto Grease Pencil. I reorganized everything and put all the mesh into one collection. Shift A to create a blank grease pencil object. Go to Modifier and add Line Art. You must have a camera in the scene for this to work. Select the collection containing the mesh, the grease pencil layer, and the black material. You can also control the radius of the outline. Go to Material to change the color of the outline. Select the grease pencil just created and go into Draw mode. For grease pencil drawing, I switched to working on my iPad. As you can see, the screen changed. You can turn on strength detection for radius and strength. Go to Data, and under Layers, you can see that there is only one, and that's the grease pencil outline we just created. Now, click the little plus sign to create another layer. This way the drawings can come on top and it's easier to use as you can hide or lock the layers you don't want to touch, as we will be starting with that. Go to Materials and add a new material for grass. Turn on Fill and change the color to green. There are several ways to draw in 3D. I'll be starting with the one that uses the 3D cursor. Change this to a 3D cursor and choose the view you want to draw in. I also changed the radius to match the outline and increased the strength to 1. Go to Brush Settings to turn on Stabilize Stroke. I also lowered the radius so that it's easier to draw. Now just place the 3D cursor down and start drawing. Note that sometimes drawings might be hidden behind the mesh. To avoid that, you can move your view around until you find the optimal position. Now onto the moss. As you can see, I did some testing and realized that drawing the grass/moss larger would create a better effect. For the moss you see on the trees, I will be changing the 3D cursor to drawing on the surface. After a lot of experimenting, an offset of 0.25 seemed to work the best. Now to draw the leaves, just use the same trick as when drawing the grass. You can also go into Edit mode to select the grease pencil drawing and move it around, just like normal mesh. For the patterns on the trees and bamboo, I created another layer and started drawing with surface, this time set to an offset of 0.01. I will be showing the patterns I chose for the trees and bamboo, etc. Go to the shader editor, change object to world, and this is what the node will look like. The colors I use for the background are these. Note that to get subtract, you have to create a math node and change it to subtract. Also change the value to -0.2. Before we animate the camera, you can turn on Cascade and Cube Size to get a better shadow in render, and then turn on Z in View Layer. To get this spinning effect, we have to animate the camera. To do this, change the shader to a timeline to add keyframes. However, if you do this directly on the camera, you might get a weird effect. This is why I'm creating an empty object and parenting the camera to it with Ctrl-P. Now if we rotate the empty, the camera rotates with it. Go to the timeline, select a frame, and hit I to key in a frame. We only need the rotation of the empty. Go to another frame, rotate the empty, and key in this frame as well. That's pretty much it. Hopefully this video was useful to you in some way. If so, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thanks for watching.